Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 12th, 2018 meeting of the City of Brentwood Planning and Zoning Commission. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Sherry Bilderbeck, here. Michael Daming,
Here.
Mark Vaza,
Here.
Rebecca Jacobs,
Here.
Jeff Moore,
Here.
Paul Moran,
Here.
Hart Nelson,
Here.
John Nurnberger, John Ritter, Lisa Schuring, here. Tom Shipley.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you, Ms. Bilderbeck. We have minutes to approve from August 8th, 2018. Are there any changes to said minutes or objections to them being approved by acclamation? Seeing none, they will be so approved. We have one item under old business. I think this should be under new business. Is that correct? Well, we have one item
Yes.
on tonight's agenda.
Sorry about that.
And that is an amendment to the conditional use permit and site plan for the McDonald's for the installation of various items. Is the applicant here this evening?
Yes.
Will you please step forward, sir, and introduce yourself and your application?
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. My name is Bob Polk. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Farnsworth Group, with office in Webster Groves. And I'm here tonight representing McDonald's USA LLC and their request of you for an amendment to their existing conditional use permit and their existing approved site plan. The request is to allow for the renovation of the existing building and some exterior site improvements, all to better serve the public at this location on Hanley Road. So if you haven't noticed, around town, McDonald's is in the midst of a 5-year, multi-billion-dollar campaign to upgrade a minimum of 80% of their restaurants nationwide by either 2020. And that was a pledge they made to their shareholders several years ago. So if you've been watching around town, there's many of them that have been renovated. And this is on the radar screen now to be renovated beginning of next year, assuming we get necessary approvals. So the iconic red mansard roof is a thing of the past. Again, if you're a regular McDonald's patron, you notice that they're disappearing rapidly. And I've yet to run into too many municipalities who say, no, leave the red mansard, we want it. So usually it's been embraced by most everyone we presented it to. So, but to be clear, the building will remain. There'll be interior renovations, new equipment, new furnishings, but the exterior will receive a pretty substantial change. So I thought I'd just quickly review the changes with you. You've got your packets. And I'll start with the building. In the back of your packets, there's, on the last 2 pages, there are building elevations. And those are black and white. And I wasn't sure if you had colored copies of the proposed elevations. That's the proposed building. And it's basically, you remove the red mansard roof and you extend the parapets vertically. And the parapet walls will be extended sufficiently high to screen any rooftop equipment. And then you get the color schemes that you see there. And if you've got this document in your packet, it also tells you the various materials. The parapet wall is EFS material. And then I mentioned the interior would be remodeled also. And if we move to the site, I'll briefly briefly run through the changes to the exterior to the site. The primary change is the second order station. It's referred to as a side-by-side order station, and it's been very successful throughout the country. Again, if you frequent McDonald's, you've probably been through one. They work very well, and they're particularly well. The concept, as developed and has proven to be correct, is that provides for a quicker time to the drive-through, to the pickup window. With the two order stations, that then you still have a single pickup window and Sarah, you still have a single pickup window here and a single drive-through lane, but you've got the two order station lanes. So it improves efficiencies and decreases the overall time of the wait to the pickup point. And the other benefit is it decreases the overall length of the drive-through queue as you wrap around the building. So if you can imagine, instead of having a single queue, you've now split that queue into two as it enters the order stations. And I think that's particularly important at this location, with, being as close as it is to Hanley, and I suppose there are times when you've got problems with cars extending out into Hanley. So this will definitely improve that situation. In your packet, there's a couple sheets that show the number of vehicles that can stack today and the number of vehicles that can stack with the completion of the project. And Lisa's pointed that out in her report, that we can queue actually 26 total cars with this configuration, as opposed to 15 today. Between Hanley Road and wrapped around to the pickup window, we can stack, you can get 26 cars fitting there today rather than 15. So I think that'll be a very positive benefit to this proposal. Of course, the addition of the second order lane there does impact the parking. We end up losing 3 parking spaces on site, and that leaves us a total of 55 spaces. There's an agreement with Home Depot for 23 off-site spaces. I think the city requirement is 57, so we're 2 spaces short. But I'd like to remind you that 70% of McDonald's sales now are through the drive-through window. And the parking is not a premium as it once was with a drive-through restaurant like this. And I can tell you, based on other operations here in St. Louis, even the 55 spaces is going to be more than sufficient for those who still park their car and walk inside the restaurant. So I guess with the amended conditional use permit, we'd have to address the fact that we only have 55 spaces as opposed to 57 that's required. And then finally, want to touch base on the signage. The existing building has 3 McDonald's signs on the red mansard on the north, south, and east faces. The new building, the new elevations, has a single McDonald's facing Hanley, and then an arch on the front of the building and an arch on the north side of the building. So the proposed elevation, the signage on the proposed elevations it's considerably less than the existing signage. And then we're working with Lisa on identifying which other signs on site require permits. Most of the existing signage on site, other than the building, will remain. The monument sign will remain. All the directional signage will remain. So I will continue to work with Lisa on what other signs require permits. A few other points of interest, as with any McDonald's upgrades, they also upgrade all their ADA facilities. So there'll be upgrades in the interior to meet ADA guidelines, and also improvements to the ADA parking and access into the building from that parking. That's a given on any McDonald's upgrade. CBB is working on a traffic study for the city. Have you heard when that? We're probably still weeks away from that, right?
Correct. We
Yeah.
won't have that yet for a while.
Okay, and then working with Lisa on the landscape plan. And then finally, it's a 24-hour operation today, and we'd like to continue with 24-hour operation with the new conditional use permit. So to summarize, I think we've got a great trifecta for you here. With the new building elevations, you got a more contemporary building, no more red mansard roof. Got more on-site stacking capacity, number 2, and number 3, less building signage. So what's not to like? So staff has recommended that you forward this on to subcommittee, and I respectfully request the same.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Polk. It is a very good application. I think it'll be a significant improvement. My concerns, frankly, and the commissioners may have a different thought, but my concerns will be limited to parking, to traffic, and to landscaping, and we have experts that are looking at those issues on behalf of the city, and we do not have their conclusions yet, correct?
Correct. They've
Okay.
been ordered.
Okay, anything else to add, Ms. Kirkemeyer?
I might just have a few things. That was a great presentation and pretty comprehensive. So I did just want to, again, draw your attention to the McDonald's store. Obviously has been there for a while. It was built back in 1999. So right now it still would be under the provisions of that conditional use permit that were spelled out in ordinance number 3619 at the time that the construction was approved. So that's our starting point, if you will. We look to see how the project is still in compliant with those original conditions. And really going through the list, everything is still compliant. We did check, as Mr. Polk had mentioned, there is this agreement for both cross-access easement and for leasing of additional parking spaces from Home Depot, which we just had the Home Depot application, and we pointed out they actually have surplus parking spaces to lease, so that's not an issue. But they have provided us the most recent copy of the lease, so that all seems to be still in order and in effect. And so, yeah, I think the question will be just to get the information back yet from what the traffic review, the internal circulation for the project, how that's going to work with the side-by-side drive-throughs. And also, we did send this over, and the architects and McDonald's are aware of this, but it really is just our kind of courtesy for the St. Louis County Department of Transportation. Anything that still has access along Brentwood Boulevard or Hanley Road, we submit that over there just for their review and comments. So Glenn Henninger for the county is looking at that. And that is important because there are some planned improvements for South Hanley Road to actually to add another southbound lane. So that's why we're certainly trying to coordinate that with the county DOT as well. The signage, Mr. Polka pointed out, and we were just even still talking about that today. So how this kind of works with the comprehensive sign plan, there are going to be signs that are on that sheet that was included in your packet that would be considered incidental signs, meaning that they're so small you can't even read them really from the road. They're there for public information, maybe to direct people to pick up, order, whatever. And then also certainly there are traffic circulation signs and so forth on private property. None of those really fit into any of the signage signage calculations. So the comprehensive sign plan provision, what it does is it talks about that we enact a comprehensive sign plan when you have projects that just don't really completely fit into the mold. And that's what happens with fast food restaurants. Your menu boards aren't addressed, things of that nature. So certainly the wall signs are, the monument sign, which is the sign that's staying. So we'll continue to kind of give that information back and forth. But at the end of the day, what the commission needs to know and the Board of Aldermen is that this project really does need to have a comprehensive sign plan that gets evaluated the same time this project moves through. And The only other thing is then I just have to do an apology. Last Friday when I was finishing out the report, if any of you read the report and noticed I left some older information that was with a different project here. So the findings, obviously, once we get the information back from Lee Cannon for the traffic review and from Andy Frankie, obviously the findings and the conditions will be revised for the next updates. I apologize for that. But I think that's probably it between, I think everything else is covered, so.
Okay, questions, comments from commissioners? Ms. Bilderbeck?
You had me at hello. No, I'm just kidding. I quote movies all the time. So actually, though, I love it. I mean, Jeff Moore and I were talking, just chit chat, not business, about how long or when we'd been on the planning commission and about the McDonald's. And I actually was here and vividly remember the conversation when it went in after we had Home Depot as an out parcel for it. And I'm laughing about the red because this was one of the first things that ever happened in Brentwood as far as major developments. I mean, Home Depot really kicked us off in the two outlots that are there in the parcels. And at the time, I remember we had Home Depot's signage, of course, is orange, is their standard color. And we had at least one commissioner who was very concerned that the red on the McDonald's was going to clash with Home Depot. So if that person is still a resident of Brentwood, if this gets approved eventually by the Board of Aldermen, they will be very happy to know that there is no longer that clashing red and orange. And setting that aside, I was going to ask the same thing, something about the sign, so that was really helpful information. And then obviously with the change that we just did with Home Depot, it's really awesome that we've got the traffic engineer looking at it to help make sure we don't make oopsies. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Understanding that we do have a traffic study underway, are remodels like this, in your experience, do they increase volume of traffic?
Yeah, they increase two ways. I mean, they increase the number of transactions slightly, and also with they increase the average size or the ticket size. I mean, the ticket amount also. So they realize overall typically about a 15% boost in revenue.
Okay.
Some of it's partially due to increased traffic, other parts due to just bigger tickets.
Great. Thank you.
So,
Mr. Shibley?
I see you answered most of my questions because I was trying to figure out what merchandise would be stored in the fire lane from McDonald's. But it appears that any traffic would have a positive impact on traffic because in the past, with only one lane, sometimes that lane would back out into Hanley. So with that, this is extremely comprehensive. Would it have to go to subcommittee? Is this something we could
Well, so we
hash out
have
tonight, just without the traffic study?
We do have the traffic engineer's already been retained and is working on it. So I don't have abundance of abundance of caution. Yeah, I would suggest we wait for his findings. But I
Great.
share your thoughts there. Anyone else? Ms. Smith, you have anything to say to the commission? Okay. Well, obviously we need to hear from Mr. Cannon and from Mr. Frankie on their findings and thoughts on this, but subject to that, it sounds as if the commission is generally in favor of your application. And if there's no other questions or comments, we can go ahead and kick this over to subcommittee. Is that acceptable to the commission? Okay, very good.
thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Polk. And let's go ahead and talk about the subcommittee meeting. We're looking at September the 26th. Is that okay with everyone? 6 p.m.? And again, I envision, barring any adverse findings on the part of our traffic engineer, parking engineer, and landscaping architect that is not acceptable to the applicant, I think that should be a pretty quick meeting. Okay, well then we'll see Mr. Polk at September 26th at 6 p.m.
Correct.
All right, is there any other new business? Any alder?
You right across the hall in this building.
I have one thing
Yeah, Mr. Shipley.
on new business. So either I've missed it in the past, but in our packet was everything submitted by this group. So first time I had read the instructions for filing, and it says they need to make 20 copies. And it occurred to me, since the size of the commission is smaller, maybe we could ask for fewer copies, because we've got a lot of paper up here that's,
Right. We can probably cut down that number some. The 20 actually was still the perfect number because we, at the staff level, before this project, before any of the projects come to P&Z, we actually have an internal site plan meeting with department heads. So that's where the other copies go, because again, sometimes they would have problems maybe with the smaller versions and the legibility. But at this point, we probably could. We could at least probably take three of the copies off, so we could revise our application to be more suitable for what they really need to
Yeah,
submit.
for me, any progress towards paperless. I understand the Board of Aldermen, they're now virtually paperless. They have iPads or something. I know it's hard to look at this on a little screen.
Right.
but
We will be
just
having a
make progress.
conversation with you. We'll be putting that on as an item for the agenda, but we're probably going to be looking to move towards that also, board docs with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we'll put that on an agenda to discuss.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other new business? I see no aldermen in the audience. City planners report. Ms. Kirkmeyer?
So we did have our first Manchester Road Planning Advisory Committee meeting, which several of you attended. And we had that kickoff meeting back on August 29th. We do have notes. We're kind of keeping notes of those meetings, just like what we do for Site Plan Subcommittee. So they haven't been loaded yet on the city's website, but they'll be on the website, and we can put those in your packets as well. But I thought it was a great kickoff meeting. I felt like the 15 people that were there certainly understand what our objectives are for this project, and it's pretty clear and concise, and we got a certain time frame to do it. So I think it's going to move pretty fast, but I think it's going to be very comprehensive and be a great exercise overall. So we are going to have our second meeting now on October 8th. If anybody else, those are all open meetings. There'll be an agenda, so if you want to come, that's Monday, October 8th at 6 p.m., I believe. And we're having the meetings, though, over at the Brentwood Recreation Complex. But what we'll be doing at the next meeting, we initially, PGAV and staff presented just kind of a bubble diagram of what we maybe envisioned as certain land uses, future land uses for our project area. So we're going to refine that at the next meeting, and then we are going to go ahead and jump right into development standards, zoning regulations. So again, if you can make it and want to participate in any of these meetings, every commission member is more than welcome to. So again, the next meeting, October 8th, and we'll be sending out a meeting notice to that effect. I don't know if anybody had any questions, or others that attended, if they wanted to comment on anything of that meeting, but
Any questions for Ms. Kirkmeyer? Okay. Rationale, we have no rationale. Any other business this evening? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you.
I got that page on.